All right, you guys, welcome back to the Wicked Kitchen. Today, we are going wicked with the holidays, all right? Everything but the tofurkey, all the sides that you need to make an incredible feast for your friends and family. We have cauliflower potato mash, we have Brussels leaves, flash fried Brussels leaves with some fried onions. We have some cranberry blood orange sauce, sourdough stuffing, marsala gravy. You guys do not want to miss this episode. Stay tuned. All right, you guys, we have a lot to do to cover this feast. And the key thing around making a big feast is timing, okay? So you wanna really look at all of your dishes of what you're making and really plan it time-wise, okay? What are the items that are gonna take the longest? What are the items that need to simmer or need to bake? And you wanna get all those items going first, okay? That way you don't feel like you're waiting too much. And while those are baking or while those are simmering, you can be getting everything else set up in place, okay? So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna get the gravy started, okay? We're gonna actually make a mushroom marsala gravy, all right? So let's start off with some onions. I'm gonna get my pan going. All right. Now this is something that I make all the time around the holidays. This is my go-to gravy. And I do it a little bit untraditional, okay? Everything that we do over at Wicked is slightly untraditional. Even if we say that it's traditional for us and us only usually. So one thing that I do with this gravy is, typical gravy is you make a roux, right? A lot of, which is basically a combination of flour and fat, all right? And depending on how much you cook that roux will determine if you have a brown gravy or a lighter gravy. And also the stock that's used. So I'm gonna make it a little bit different. I'm gonna go a little bit backwards when it comes to making this gravy to show you that you don't have to always start with the roux. I'm gonna actually use a slurry, which is a thickening sauce, you know, made out of a little bit of flour, a little nutritional yeast and stuff like that. So we'll get to that in a little bit, but just letting you all know that are watching this, that this is an untraditional gravy, obviously, because we are using all veggies and we're using mushrooms here. So I'm gonna get going first. I'm gonna start off with the aromatics. So we have some onions. And when it comes to the holidays, the core herbs that I'm gonna be using is basically thyme. More of the hardy herbs, okay? There's two sort of categories of herbs. There's delicate herbs, which you add to finished dishes to really give you that delicate touch and that sort of freshness, like cilantro, basil, mint, those type of items. And then there's more of the hardy herbs that also they'll grow in colder months, which you know you need to actually cook to bring out those essential oils and a lot of the flavors. So we are going to start off with some thyme and some rosemary. So I have my onions prepped. I'm just gonna get some rosemary going and some thyme. And you can sit there and stem every little leaf from the thyme, but I do not. I just pull them from the stem and you're ready to go. So let's check on that. So I'm gonna use a good amount. So we are making a feast. So we're gonna start off with this gravy, and then we're going to get the items going, the mirepoix, which is the vegetables and butter and sauce, stock that we're gonna end up using for the stuffing too. So I will use these same herbs for that recipe in just a little bit. But first, we want to get this going. So I want to make sure I have enough herbs. So I have about almost equal parts thyme and rosemary. I'm going to use a little bit more. All right, so let's start off with some oil. I'm going to add those onions. All right, I'm going to add the herbs in just a moment. Let's add a couple pieces of garlic. All right. So one thing that I don't do is I don't add the garlic and onions. It's kind of my little thing is I don't add the garlic and onions at the same time all the time, all right? Because garlic cooks at a different temperature than onions, and garlic tends to burn if the heat is a little too high, especially if you're pan frying the onions. Right now I'm just trying to sweat them a little bit, not get them too hot, so it's on about a medium to low heat. But if you're pan frying the onions, I add the garlic, you know, after they have a little bit of color, because otherwise, you know, burnt garlic is going to certainly change the flavor of a dish, bring out the bitterness. So I'm adding the garlic and I'm adding the herbs. same time, okay? Stir that up, and you can already get the aromatics in there. I love the smell of these hearty herbs, and garlic and onion. Oh, it's so nice. So usually whenever I'm making a holiday feast, I will start in the morning. My family knows that, you know, I'm in the kitchen all day. I absolutely love it. It's my favorite holiday because it's all about sharing a meal with people that you love and being grateful about all the things that we have, right? And especially when you're focused on a plant-based meal, you can really showcase that compassion a little bit more around these holidays, right? So, all right, so we have the onions, we have the garlic, we have the herbs. I'm gonna now chop up some different mushrooms, all right? So I'm gonna use these stems for something else in another dish, but I like to, these are oysters, king oysters. Okay, also smaller versions of trumpets. So I'm gonna use those for something else, but what I like to do with these, because I like seeing pieces of mushrooms in there, I'm just gonna slice these up, just the caps really. You can do a combination of really any mushrooms you wish. You know, you can just use baby bellas, you can just use white buttons, which is great. I like to use a combination of mushrooms because around these holidays, mushrooms are in season, wild mushrooms. So really, you know, chanterelles or hedgehog mushrooms, those are a great addition as well. I'm just gonna use a mixture here. So I have some baby bellas. All right, so I have also these beach mushrooms. Also, these can be looked at also as shimiji mushrooms. I like these because these are just, they hold their shape really well. You just wanna make sure that you cut off the bottom because the bottom tends to be a little gritty. So a lot of those mushrooms, as long as they're clean and not too dirty, what I'll use them for is a stock. Okay, so I'll use, if I'm making any kind of soup stock or mushroom stock of any sort, I will use all these mushroom scraps for that. So, all right, those onions have some color. I'm gonna add in the mushrooms. All right, so this is a critical step. So when you're cooking the mushrooms, you want to make sure that they're not cooking in a dry pan. Sometimes the onions themselves will absorb all that oil. So you want to make sure that there is a little bit of oil in the pan. If you need to hit it with a touch more, you can, just a touch, just so it is not sticking. But then I'm just gonna let it sit for a moment, all right? All right, so we let it sit. We're getting that color, all right? And now you're getting all those little bits. So you see all those little, see that coloration on the bottom of the pan? That right there is caramelization, all right? And so that's what you want. That is really nice. This is the stage that we want. We get the mushrooms. They're almost fully cooked. They got a little bit of color on them. The onions are translucent. Now I'm gonna deglaze. So that term deglazing is basically picking up all those sugars from the bottom of the pan, all right? So that's what deglazing means when you read it in a recipe. So I have some Marsala wine. I use a dry. You can use a sweet as well. I can add more than you think you would need, all right? All right, so I'm gonna add that and I'm gonna let this now simmer. And as this simmers, it's gonna concentrate, all right? And so the nice thing about when you're using a wine, whether you're using a sherry or using a Marsala, even a Madeira, you're basically reducing it. You're concentrating the sugars, you're concentrating the acidity, and you're releasing that alcohol for that potential bitterness that it can carry. So you're concentrating and you're creating a ton of flavor just in this stage, right? I'm gonna hit it with a little bit of salt, some pepper, and when you start cooking with all those aromatics and with the onions and the garlic and the Marsala wine, I mean, the smells coming out of your kitchen is incredible. So I'm gonna simmer this down. I'm gonna lower it down to a medium heat. What I've found over the years, which for this particular gravy, is I'm taking flour and I'm taking a combination of flour and nutritional yeast. Okay, so I have some all-purpose here. And then I have some nutritional yeast, which gives it a little, definitely highlights the umami bit in this gravy. Okay. And then I have some vegetable stock, which is gonna be the base of what I'm using anyways. And I'm going to just whisk this up. So you're basically making a slurry out of flour, and some people are gonna say, that's not cooked. But when you're cooking it in a slurry, when you're actually making the slurry, you make sure that you want to make sure that you're stirring out any lumps, all right? So you don't want to do this before, grab a little whisk. And so while this is cooking, I'm going to actually pour this in and I'm going to be whisking it in the gravy, okay? This is going to naturally thicken up the gravy and it will cook since it's going to be simmering with the vegetable stock in just a little bit here. All right, so now this is reduced down by, I would say, over half. This has been simmering now for anywhere from, 5-6 minutes. We're going to add the vegetable stock, all right? Going to add the vegetable stock, and we're going to bring that up to a simmer. When that comes up to a simmer, we're going to let it cook for a little while. We're going to re-season it. We're going to hit it with this sort of slurry that we made, and then we're going to finish it with some butter. Try it, see if it needs to be re-seasoned with a little bit more salt and pepper, and then that is done, okay? So we are gonna move this over to the next burner and start on the next recipe. Okay, so let's get into stuffing. I'm just gonna dice these up. So typically when it comes to reading recipes, there's you can basically look at a recipe, you can hand it over to 5-10 people, and they're gonna all, if they're different skill levels, they're all going to translate that recipe completely differently, okay? Because if a recipe reads caramelize, reduce, deglaze, roast, pan fry, blanch, poach, you got all these culinary terms, and they're translated so differently, because if you don't know the foundations of cooking, if you don't understand and you're not familiar with the foundational cooking principles of these really basic cooking techniques, you're gonna translate it so differently, okay? So it's, the key to cooking, it is. I mean, the key to cooking is obviously great ingredients, a passion for doing it, but it's really understanding those foundational, critical cooking methods, okay? And that way, if you know how to properly saute, you know how to properly sweat and properly blanch and poach and all those items, and to caramelize, you're getting, that's the majority of the recipe. That's what cooking's all about, is that once you know the foundations, then you can kind of build from there, and the ingredients really speak for themselves, right? So, all right, so we're gonna chop up some carrots. All right, we have some carrots, we have some celery. Let's make sure that's on heat. All right, so I have half an onion here. So these are all going in the pan at the same time. All right, so this pan is up to heat. Add some olive oils. I'm gonna make sure that that's on a low to medium. That sounds like high, so we're gonna lower that down a little bit. All right. So when you actually sweat vegetables or sweat onions, you should hear little to no sound whatsoever, okay? So these are lightly, let's call it lightly sauteing, okay? All right, so we have the mirepoix going. That's gonna be lightly cooking. We're gonna actually cut up a bunch of these herbs as well, similar to what we did before with the gravy. Okay, so we have some rosemary, we have some thyme. The only addition here is we're gonna have a little bit of sage. All right, so I have all these savory herbs. I have some sage in there that I'm adding here, so I'm just gonna finely mince this. I don't like putting a ton of sage, just because sage has a really potent flavor. It almost tastes musty when you add too much of it. But if you add, really just a small amount, similar to the same amount as thyme, it's going to really, bring out those other flavors, those aromatics of the holidays. So that's looking good. We're gonna add those in. All right, so I'm stirring in those herbs, and we're gonna let this continue to, cook and bring out those flavors in the herbs. All right, I'm gonna swap burners again with the gravy so we can finish the gravy off or get it going anyways. We're going to add a little bit of this. This is gonna thicken it up. Okay, I don't like a super thick gravy, okay, but just enough And you can kind of see it thickens up quite quickly. All right, that is what we need right there. We're gonna continue letting this simmer on a low. Then we're gonna finish it off with some vegan butter. This butter is Miyoko's. It's a vegan butter. Amazing, amazing product. There's a lot of products on the market. This is just has great flavor. So you finish it with some knobs of butter. And so what I'll do if I'm making this and it's just gonna basically be sitting for a little while, I'll just basically put a lid on it, keep it on low, and let that gravy just sit for a little bit, okay? So as that sits on low, that is done, all right? So we'll stir it up, make sure that butter is distributed in a little bit. All right, so this is looking good, all right? You do not want to, one key thing, when you're making stuffing, you do not want to cook these until they're completely soft, okay? You still want them to have a little bit of a bite, a little bit of a crispness in there. And so I'm gonna actually keep it on low. I'm gonna move on to the next steps. So I have some vegan chicken stock. You can get lots of different variations on the market. There's cubes, there's a bouillon. A company I use is Better Than Bouillon. It's really good here in the States. You can use vegetable stock also. But what I'm adding here is some stock. Gonna bring that up to a simmer. So let's season that. So it's a heavily seasoned liquid with some veggies. Okay. I'm gonna add some black pepper in there. You got the herbs, you got the mirepoix. I'm gonna finish it with butter. So it's a lot of the, you can see the theme here, right? A lot of the same flavors around the holidays, but they all work so well together. That's why they do, because you're using a lot of those sort of similar ingredients, you know, and you're working with the richness of the gravy and the creaminess of the potatoes and sharpness of the cranberry sauce, which we're gonna make in a little bit. Okay, so what I like to do is I like to make my stuff. I like sourdough stuffing, okay? So I have a sourdough bread here. You can get fresh sourdough bread, or you can use, the nice thing about stuffing, it can be totally day old or just bread crumbs or whatever you wish. But I'm gonna just go ahead and slice this up. I'm gonna cube it up, and this is gonna be our bread for the stuffing. Shut that gravy off. Make sure. Oh, that's good. Look at that. You can see that beautiful consistency of that gravy. Not too thick, and again, you can adjust the thickness. When you make that slurry, you can really adjust that thickness of how thick you want that gravy. You can try it now. If it needs a little more seasoning, you can certainly add it, but this should be good. We seasoned it early and concentrated all those flavors. We're just gonna set this aside, keep it hot while we finish up the stuffing. So at most bakeries, what you can do is you can actually get them pre-cubed, which also helps. Cuts out a step. You get them sliced and cubed. All right, so at this point, I've already seasoned it a bit. Now, again, it's the holidays. You can skip the butter if you wish, but we're not gonna do that here. Not for these videos. So I have some butter in there. Okay. So just a little bit of butter. Just a little bit, really. Just a tiny bit of butter, tiny bit of fat. I worked in the oil world for a long time, and I can certainly make a lot of alternatives without fat, but we are going for absolute richness in this holiday meal. So we are gonna melt that butter. I'm gonna lower it down, and that's it. Again, you don't want those vegetables getting ultra soft, all right? So that's on a simmer, it's melting the butter. You can basically shut it off the heat, and we can just start stirring in the bread. And this right here, that's so good. So this is gonna absorb all of that liquid, all right? So one other step. So the oven is preheated, all right? The oven's on 375, 350, 375, okay? All right, so you can see, and you have some of those firmer pieces. This is gonna sit. The longer it sits, it's gonna sit for a little while. You're not gonna serve this right now. So what I am going to do is I'm going to bake it. I have a casserole dish. I'm just gonna lightly spray the pan. Just gonna fill that casserole dish with the stuffing. We're gonna throw it in the oven on 350. This is gonna melt all the flavors together because this stuffing is good to go right here, but I like to sort of tighten it up a little bit, and baking does that. So oh, it just smells so good, you guys. Those aromatics, so those savory herbs, and it smells so nice. All right, so this is going in the oven. Going in the oven on 350 for about 10 to 15 minutes. And then you can just shut the oven off and it can just sit in there, okay, to warm until you serve it. So we're gonna put this in the oven and we're gonna move on to making a cranberry sauce and also a Brussels sprout dish. We are going to make a cranberry sauce. So cranberry sauce is one of those dishes that whenever I make it, I love making it, and for some reason, it's just nice to have it. Couple reasons. The color is really nice on the table. I like a little bit of cranberry sauce to cut through all the richness. That acidity cuts through all the richness on your plate. But whenever I make cranberry sauce, there's only about 3 tablespoons that get eaten. So if you're a cranberry sauce fan, this is the way to go rather than that big old can, right? So I'm gonna start this off. You can use fresh cranberries or frozen whole cranberries, works as well. I'm gonna start off by adding, this is more of like a cranberry chutney than it is a sauce, okay? So I have some shallot. All right, we're gonna do a very fine mince on the shallot. All right, so I'm gonna add the cranberries as soon as those onions hit the oil. We basically add the cranberries. And now cranberries have a natural pectin in them, okay? So when you actually cook them down, even though it's quite thin in the pan, if it's gonna cook down, it represents more of a sauce in a pan. Once you chill it, it thickens up a lot. So keep that in mind when you're cooking it and when you're looking at consistency, okay? So I have some thyme in here. You can either pluck them or you can put them in whole and pick them out later, which I'm just gonna put them in whole and pick them out later. So I have a little bit of thyme. Okay, I'm gonna put that on low. I also have an orange. You can use an orange, you can use a mandarin, you can use a blood orange, which this is. Figured it was appropriate with the color. That's so beautiful, huh? And it's gonna add a nice citrus note to this. I'm gonna do a little bit of lemon zest as well. So this is gonna really play into that citrusiness, that citrus note of the citrusiness. Yeah, it might be a word, right? It is today. So that citrus note that cranberries typically have, the acidity, the sweetness. So I'm adding a little bit of lemon zest in there, okay? So as this is starting to cook, it's gonna start to release a lot of water, and then it's gonna naturally start thickening up, okay? And one thing I also do is I do add a little bit of a slurry at the end. I'll add a little bit of cornstarch at the end, all right? And that's gonna thicken this up. So we have the thyme, we have some shallot, okay? Touch of oil. We have the cranberries going on in there. We have the citrus. I'm also going to add a little bit of maple. This is the New England in me. I like to add maple. Maple is what I reach for most sweeteners. If I'm gonna sweeten up something, I'll reach for maple. It's just kind of automatic. You can use a little bit of sugar, a little bit of brown sugar works as well. But I'm just using probably about a tablespoon and a half or so. So this is gonna go on low, okay? And that's gonna cook for a little while. So the next thing we're gonna move on to is we're going to prep these Brussels sprouts. Roasted Brussels sprouts is one of those things that, are hit or miss with a lot of people, right? I love them. I like fried Brussels sprouts. I like shaved raw Brussels sprouts. What I like to do, I like to spend all day in the kitchen. So you might just go the route of, slicing them, quartering them or what. But I like to actually take the leaves off these. That sounds very tedious, which it certainly is. But what I'll do is I'll just sit there while I'm doing something, while something's cooking. I'll cut the end off and I'll just bring it all down to the leaves, okay? And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna flash fry these. I'm gonna wok fry them real fast, just with a little bit of oil, a little bit of salt and pepper. You can add a little shallot in there. It's just so nice because you get that crispness, you get that freshness, and it's a great way to highlight a green on the holidays, you know? You can do roasted kale or, you know, have salads and all that, but I haven't been at many holiday dinners where the salad gets eaten, you know? So this is a nice way to get the greens in. So I'm basically just peeling those up. And so what I'll do is I end up having all of these, you know, sort of hearts of the Brussels sprouts left over, and I'll just use those in a stir fry the next day or the coming days. So I cut the bottom off, make sure you know these are washed, and make sure you kind of take off the ones that are a little discolored. These are really nice looking Brussels, so I'm just basically peeling off those leaves. All right, so now that your leaves are done, I'll set those aside in a bowl. All right, so let's check on this cranberry sauce. So you can see it's starting to reduce down, and it is so beautiful. I mean, the color, the smell is so nice. So I'm just gonna, I'm not mashing it. I'm just gently folding it, okay? And what you're doing is you're also releasing that pectin, that natural pectin that's in there. So we're gonna keep this going on a low heat. We're gonna swap it out with the wok. All right, so with the wok is considered high heat cooking. So you wanna get this ripping hot, okay? Just like if you're gonna do any kind of the mushroom series that we've done in a bunch of other videos, you wanna get the cast iron really, really hot. It's high heat cooking. It's the same thing with woks. Stir frying is high heat, so you wanna always keep it on high when we're doing this. This is gonna be a fairly quick dish. So while this wok is very hot and smoking, I just wanna show you this cranberry sauce is done. See, all the water is evaporated. It has a nice cook on it. I'm gonna shut this off the heat and let this sit. You can also cool it. All right, this is hot, obviously. I'm gonna not use olive oil with high heat cooking. This is a vegetable oil. It's actually a peanut oil. I'm gonna use those Brussels, add those Brussels in there. So you can see it immediately hits the pan, it gets some color. Hit it with some salt and pepper. That's just on the heat, just for literally a minute and a half, okay? Let's serve that up. So, get yourself a vessel. Get those Brussels in there. These are so beautiful. They have such a gorgeous color. So I'm gonna finish that. I have some fried onions, okay? You can, fried onions, fried shallots. I'm just gonna sprinkle a little bit of those on there. And it is so nice. I mean, the smell of just the Brussels, salt and pepper, super simple dish. One of my favorite sides to make, especially around the holidays. So this is good to go. All right, so let's start checking everything off the list here. So we have some cranberry sauce. Oh, look at that color, it's beautiful. So what I'll do, just remember, I'll keep the thyme in there and just warn the guests, or you can pull the thyme out, whichever one you prefer. All right, next we have a mash. So this mash we actually made a little while ago. So this is a mash that you can find on the channel. You can check out the link right here. This has a combination of potatoes and also cauliflower. It's a great way to get, really a great way to get in those other vegetables, especially when kids are at the holidays, and it just adds a really nice, nice texture to it. Let's go ahead and grab that stuffing. Sourdough stuffing. Oh, it looks so good. It smells so friggin' good. This is the moment I've been waiting for. I don't know about you guys, but I've been waiting for this moment to dig in. So I'm just gonna serve myself up, all right? So we have that mash. Oh my goodness. Mash. We have some of that gorgeous sourdough stuffing. Oh, looks so good. All about the comfort around the holidays. Let's grab some of those beautiful Brussels. You guys, I mean, this is, for me, I don't need a main. These are all the main, you know, this is just absolutely delicious. And you know what? I'm gonna go in for a little bit of cranberry sauce because it cuts through all that richness so perfectly. And let's top it off. All about the gravy. Let's top it off with some gravy. Oh, it's beautiful. Look at that. Look at that feast, you guys. I'm sorry. I know this is gonna make you jealous, but you know what? You gotta make the recipes. Oh my gosh. Holidays came early. That gravy ties everything together, you guys. Those Brussels, forget about it. That's some good food right there. Happy holidays to everybody. I'm gonna enjoy this. We'll see you next time. If you are having guests over for the holidays, this is where you put them to work. You know, you have little kids, put them to work. This is a great little task. Or friends that are stopping by for a meal, get them working.